You are on speaker view, record. Okay. So hello, everybody, and welcome to the May speaker session with Rewiring Your Wellness and Lindsay Mitchell from VitalSide. We're happy to have you here today. We appreciate everyone that's showing up, and especially people, thank you so much for donating whatever resources you have. We really appreciate that when you buy your tickets, as it really helps us fund these sessions. And my assistant Kathleen is here today. I just pointed, I don't know where she is, but she does live in Scotland, so she's probably like over that way. But she's on. If you have technical challenges, you can message her directly in the chat. She's awesome, and yeah, she's there for you. She'll be dropping links into the chat. When I mention links, she'll drop them in there for you, so you can just grab them and click on them. Let's see what else. For next month's session, we will be having Meredith Walensky, who is a body-mind coach, and she will be talking about retrainers returning to work and how to make that an easy process. If you'd like to sign up, our newsletter does go out about the 15th of the month, so check for that, and that link will be in the newsletter. Besides that, let's get started for today. We'll get started, and I'll introduce a little bit about myself and then Lindsay. My name's Ashley, or Ash, whichever one you want to call it, and I've been kind of in this retraining world since 2017, doing my own retraining, figuring out my own life, finding things I love, and I love talking to people. I love having discussions and conversations, and I love community. So I brought that all together into this platform so that we can all learn together, grow together, and I hopefully help and support each other's growth as well. So with Rewiring Your Wellness, we have the monthly newsletters. We have, if you haven't checked out the blog section of our website, you could drop that link in, Kathleen. It's full of so much information. So many wonderful people have done 4-session blogs. So they'll pick a theme and then write a blog about that. And there's just so much good stuff on there, so much good information. I mean, you can learn so much about retraining and everything you could ever want to know on there. So that's available. We also have a Facebook community, and we're just keeping growing and supporting people. And yeah, if you ever have any ideas about topics that you'd like to be discussed, feel free to email me, and Kathleen can drop that link in the chat below as well. So thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. And I'm going to read a little bit about Lindsay because I can't remember everything. So this is Lindsay Mitchell. She's
Ashley,
awesome. Oh, yeah.
And people mentioned your volume's quite low.
Oh,
I don't know if you can adjust that.
thank you. Let me see. Is this better?
That's a bit better.
Let me see. I'll put it all the way to the top. That's as high as I can get it. How's that? I can put on my headphones too.
That's better, I think.
Y'all give me a thumbs up if it's good or if you want me to put on my headphones. Thumbs up? Okay. Let us know. If it's not, I can put on my headphones. So if you have any problems, let me know. Perfect. So glad. Thank you so much for letting us know. So Lindsay Mitchell from VitalSide. I've been following Lindsay, I think, since I started brain retraining in 2017. And she's always been such a sunshine, such a beautiful, flowery sunshine lady. And I love her and everything that she offers. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about it. So today's topic is brain retraining and somatics and where to use them in your practice. Lindsay is the founder of VitalSide, a membership program that empowers those with chronic illness and limbic system impairment to retrain their brain out of the chronic stress response. She has over 2,500, I always have a hard time saying that, 2,500 VitalSiders in her private community, and has been coaching people all over the world since 2018. Lindsay has studied and worked in medicine since 2009. She works as an NLP practitioner and has experienced recovering from Lyme disease herself, which makes her uniquely qualified to assist in learning how to shift symptoms and their responses and experience positive changes. So that is Lindsay. She's pretty awesome. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Lindsay, today before we get into it?
Hi, well, thank you, everyone. And thank you, Ash, for the warm welcome. I love everything that you do and put out there too. So thank you all for having me. Yeah, I'm traveling this year in my Airstream. And so if you can't hear me or whatever, just stop and tell me. I have like 5 internets to switch between. And thank you for having me. I'm excited about this topic today because how it came to fruition was I asked people in my community and on my Instagram, what is it y'all are wanting to hear and learn about? And I know, Ashley, you did the same thing within your community. And this was a hot topic. So I'm really happy to shed some light and like bring some simplification to somatics versus brain retraining.
I love it. Perfect. Well, thank you for being here, and we're excited to hear about it. Let's see. What is our first question? Sorry, it's the first time I got to look at the packet today. Well, I guess just start where you're at, Lindsay. Tell us about the basics, tell us about the intro, tell us about what you know, and as we delve in deeper, I'll ask more questions, probably. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to hear from you. So all of you who are live here today, if you can just give me a thumbs up either in your screen or like on reactions, if you are either working in brain retraining or a somatic practice today, just so I can kind of gauge who's actively doing it, maybe who's learning some information. So looks like quite a few of you, maybe about half the people here are doing that. Okay. So keep me posted, like if you have questions that come up, because I really want to make sure this is specific to you. I think the reason why this has been such a hot topic lately is because, somatics, like Peter Levine coined somatic experiencing in the 1970s, but now we're hearing about it. Like he was specifically kind of focused on trauma and PTSD. And so now we're hearing about somatic practices in the nervous system regulation world, which I think is fantastic. I think including that body piece, like Ash knows, like this is a really important part of your practice and of learning to start to trust your body and trust yourself and your reactions. So I love that's a huge topic that's really started trending within the last 2 years or so. But I think there's also been some confusion, and y'all can let me know. But I think there's been some confusion around what is somatic practices versus like what is brain retraining. And I've seen like on social media people posting, well, you can't, feel better, heal from chronic illness, heal chronic symptoms without the somatic piece or without brain. you know Whenever we kind of like experience that fear related response in association to a post like that, it drives me nuts, right? Because what we want to be able to do as brain retrainers is like constantly connect with what it feels like to model safety in our bodies again and again and again. So been like what it is that you need as a brain retrainer. Others like thrive. Each of these are standing. So there's this like overall term of nervous system regulation, and you hear about nervous system regulation with everything, right? From that trauma processing piece all the way to kind of healing and recovering from chronic illnesses. And nervous system regulation requires like a whole lot of different tools and modalities to somatic work or somatic tools or somatic experiencing, like what Dr. Peter Levine talks about. And there are a lot of different tools within those buckets. So we know about the top-down regulation, and we know about that bottom-up approach. And so I want to make one thing clear is brain retraining and somatic work can be both top-down and bottom-up. So first, brain retraining typically means we are working with our cognitive processes to make changes to the way that we feel, or our mental processes. So a lot of times people say, okay, well, that's like almost the definition of top-down regulation. But if you delve deeper into a lot of brain retraining programs, Vital Sight included, we include a lot of the bottom-up approach as well. So a lot of working with the body combined into brain retraining, and a lot of the different programs do that. So just to kind of make it clear that brain retraining doesn't only mean addressing mental processes. It can be maybe heavy in that, because often with brain retraining, we think initiating the thinking brain, mental processes used to change the body, visualization, imagery, language changes, these types of things that kind of make sense, right? Using that thinking brain. Now, somatics is often referred to as a bottom-up approach. Again, they often have very commonalities between the two. I think a lot of them are kind of a combination of top-down and bottom-up. So soma means body. And what we're doing with brain retraining is communicating a new way of being to the body, so the body sends a new response back to the brain. And we're constantly modeling that sense of safety again and again and again. With somatic work, what we're doing is starting with the body. We're body forward, and we're engaging our physical body to model a new way of being to the brain. And so as you can see, both brain retraining and somatic work is focused on that brain-body or mind-body communication and signaling a new way of being. And how I've referred to it mostly recently, like within the last year, is what we're doing is it's not like forced shifting or forced transformation. What we're doing with both brain retraining and somatic work is we're modeling a new way of being. So, for example, with somatic work, you can use things like vagal toning or vagus nerve stimulation, breathing, physical touch, movement, dance, right? There's so many different somatic tools, but you can kind of think of it as body forward. So we can signal that new way of being or model that new way of being again and again. So anytime you use one of those somatic tools, maybe your favorite breath, or maybe your favorite visualization, or you love a state changer that includes laughter, what you're doing is not forcing yourself to shift and to change. What you're doing is modeling to your body a new way of being, so that that communication gets reinforced. Oh, this is what safety feels like. And if it's not safety, it's ease or peace, or sometimes people are really focused on joy. So it really depends on your intention. So we can talk more about that later today, like based on your intention, what can you use? Like brain retraining, a visualization technique, or maybe a somatic tool makes more sense here. But yeah, I think for very, very simplistic purposes, we're saying brain retraining, using the brain to model to the body a new way of being to improve overall communication. Somatic tools, body modeling to the brain a new way of being to improve communication, y'all, because you can't do one without the other. And I think that is like a really confusing thing with a lot of the information we have out there, is like, oh, I'm just addressing the body. I'm just addressing a new way of being to my body. You cannot singularly communicate with your body and not communicate with your brain. So you're doing it all the time, y'all. So if today you're like, I'm in a somatic, program, or I'm only in a brain retraining program, what I'd love for you to do is like put some focused attention on how you use the other tool. Because I can guarantee you're likely using a bit of somatics or a bit of brain retraining. So don't let, limby, your limbic brain, come in and create that fear response when you see that post that says, if you're not using somatics or if you're not using brain retraining, then you're doing things wrong and you won't heal. Give yourself that permission to be like, oh, maybe I am using some of this other tool, oh, like I can breathe because I'm focused on that brain body communication, and nervous system regulation as a whole really focuses on that brain body modeling a new way of being over and over and over again.
Mm.
So I hope that provided like a little bit of clarity around the difference between the two. I think it is, at some points brain retraining is more beneficial and other somatics, but again, it's likely you're doing a bit of a combination of the two. We can get more specific on like what to use when, but I hope that provided a little bit of that foundation work before we kind of start with questions.
I love so I tend to complicate things. I love how you make it so simple. Top down, bottom up, we're doing the same thing. I think I would say the same thing, really. I think there's a tendency, for myself included, and people, because I think we're working a high stakes game. We're working with our lives and our happiness and our joy and our relationships, and we all really have high stakes in all those things. So limby can become very activated when things say you can't heal, or you have to do this, or don't do that. But I think, like Lindsay said, in my own kind of classes and practice, it really is more than anything, it's about finding things that fit you. And I think Lindsay, I took some classes with you, and you were also into this concept. Like, you have brain retraining and you have somatics and you have all these tools and practices, and at the point where they're just tools, something, like, oh, I can do this breath and I can do this brain retraining practice. But I believe the point really is to find what feels good to you, what resonates with you, and that actually is more healing than doing a tool, using just a tool for the sake of using a tool to become more regulated. Really finding what we enjoy in the top down and the bottom up approach, because there's so many tools. So I love that, and I do believe everyone has their own needs to look into their own kind of body and find what they enjoy and what their body resonates with.
And I think this is a good time to also say, okay, the expectation maybe that I had of this like one program to provide me with all the tools so I can feel my best. It's like, no, each program has its own strengths and unique capabilities, and you see people heal in these different programs, and that's amazing. But what you need, your like prescription that you need to kind of start connecting with yourself, starting to retrain and rewire some of these pathways, can and will be different from other people's. So you can use one program for a specific amount of time and see great results, but give yourself the ability to be flexible and say, I am also unique. So maybe at this time, now is the time to introduce something else, or now is the time to maybe process trauma. For a lot of my clients, that's not until like a year or two after they're like 80% or more better in the way that they're feeling with their physical symptoms. So allow yourself permission to evolve like we're doing all the time, whether you're healing or not. Everyone is on this evolution journey, and allow yourself to do that so that you feel more flexible in your approach to, the journey that you're on.
I love that. The evolving journey. Yeah, it's so it's so easy to get that all or nothing mindset with the programs. This didn't help. And that everything helps, guys. Everything helps. And we're all just growing and healing and finding out that we're whole together. Lindsay, just noticing there seemed to be a bit of cutting out. Not terrible. It's not terrible, but it lags a little bit here and there. I'm hesitant to ask you to change connections just because I don't want it to be worse. I just wanted to let you know, yeah.
Let me know if it gets worse, and then
Okay.
I'm happy to take 2 minutes and change connection. So,
Okay, perfect.
yeah.
And you guys let us know too, because I'm not sure if it's different on your internet than mine. So you'll kind of be oh, good. Thank you, Jamie. Appreciate that. Yeah, thank you so much, Lindsay. I really appreciate this. I think I heard from some people in the chat that just thank you for normalizing this, and that the evolution of our growth. I know for me and my situation, I definitely got to kind of like the 95%, well, with physical symptoms 100%, but kind of with emotional things 95%. And then big life things can happen. I know a lot of people, big life things happen, and then it's kind of like you can't control that stuff, and you start using different tools for the moment. And I think somatics is such a new hot word in the community and in the world at large. People are still trying to figure out what it means exactly, and where to get that information from. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm super excited for it. It's something, the body is something that I've been very interested in understanding, and I call it like just learning the language of this organismic kind of, it's like animal that we're all a part of, and I'm super excited. So thank you for being here. And I'd love to talk about kind of what situations would be the best for retraining versus using somatic tools. And even if there's some somatic tools that you love and like, and that your body loves.
When I think about healing from the stress response, which we are all doing to some degree, whether it's showing up as physical symptoms in your body, like inflammation or sensitivities, or emotional, right, reactivity or stress or that overwhelm. So we come back to the survival responses. And I've definitely, like, over time and after studying this for years, have changed kind of the process of what to use in the moment where you recognize these responses. And so in the moment, when you can recognize something like that fight flight response, like that hyperreactivity in the moment, or the reaction or that sensitivity, you want to focus on completing the stress cycle. So I love to think about in that moment of like, okay, it's like this reaction, right? And your limbic brain is like, go, fight, flee, right? In that moment. And I recognize that a somatic tool like movement or dance, or like one of my favorites is just like shaking out your entire body. And if you're not mobile, like if you're not really, you're pushing yourself out your training zone and you're like, I can't shake my body, lying in bed, blowing out your lips and kind of, I like got spit all over my face, and kind of like moving through that stress response and doing something like that for about 30 seconds, more somatic tool, and then stepping into what is that opposite response. So then being able to like, okay, we're trying to connect with that modeling of ease or modeling of peace. So now maybe I'll introduce more of the brain retraining tool and, do something like okay, now I've moved that energy. I've moved that response, right? It's all about that physiological stress response, right? That hormonal, neurochemical communication going on in the brain and body. I've moved that. And now I can sit still, maybe put a hand over my belly and heart, take some deep breaths in, and do one of my favorite calming breaths, or bring to mind a moment of time where my body was working for me. So using more of the mental processes and thinking of these experiences, bringing in your five senses, and being able to kind of reconnect with that, bringing that into the present. And so really completing all of this can take like 2 minutes.
Mm.
The freeze response, so more of that shut down brain fogginess, that kind of like, oh, fatigue, got to step away, maybe kind of like that depression, in that moment, completing that stress cycle is going to look different. So in that moment, my go-to is like lying down, or I love like getting on the floor, like really kind of grounding in and like getting on the floor. And this can be considered a little bit more of that brain retraining tool. So getting on the floor and kind of like allowing your body to almost like melt into the floor, using a little bit of visualization of like seeing, putting your hands on the floor, putting your legs, your feet on the ground, and like watching your body kind of melt into the floor and like step into that sense of total kind of silence, and allowing your body to rest in that moment. And then after about 30 seconds of that, then we do the opposite, right? So the opposite of freeze is like, now I'm going to start a little bit of movement, right? So maybe you're on the ground and you're like, okay, I'm going to start singing my favorite song, right? Or like one of my go-tos is called Thank You for This Day. And it's like, thank you for this day. Thank you for this day. And maybe you can start like moving your body like this, or tapping on your body, like slowly tapping on your body. And then you start moving your body on the ground, creating a little bit of movement. Because if you think about that animal in the wild and they're playing dead because they think they're about to get eaten, and they go into that freeze response, then they move away, because again, it's all about protection. So their body was protecting them by going into freeze, and then they allow their physical body to run, to move away. This is us going into protection and then moving away. We allow our bodies, model a new way of being, start to tap on our bodies, wake up. We allowed ourselves to rest, and now we're moving, we're going. So again, communicating a new way of being, kind of with that combination approach of the two. So fight, flight, we start with somatic, end in brain retraining. Freeze, we start with brain retraining, end in somatic. You see the similarities in both, but kind of that's a good rule of thumb to think about. And then overall, you asked, Ash, like one of my favorite kind of somatic tools. Like the first thing I'll recommend, and it's likely no one here is doing it, and if you are, let me know, because that's awesome. But when you're using like a brain retraining protocol, you often don't think about the body, but we personify things in brain retraining, right? So we've got limby, and limby is this protective mechanism. In vital side, we talk about peri, P-A-R-Y, and peri is that rest and digest response. We describe him as like a soft teddy bear who's like always available to you. Again, another way to keep you alive and to thrive. But the body, personify the body. So you can give your body, you can call it soma, you can call it another name if you want, like we have peri and limby. You can call it another name that maybe resonates with you more. And as you're beginning to learn to trust your body, start to talk to your body. Just like we model to limby a new way of being. Hey, limby, you don't have to be on guard all the time. We can model to you a new way of being. Same thing with the body. We can be like, hey, body, Hey, Soma, what is it that you need? What do you want? And like, you know, how we think about Limby as this like toddler that we're kind of training, or maybe you think of Limby as a younger version of yourself. With body, I kind of think of it like Ash, you mentioned this earlier, almost as like an animal, like a sweet, like, you know, very physical, very tangible animal that I'm like, okay, what is it that you need? Because I know sometimes, like when I don't feel like dancing, like personally, dancing is one of my favorite go-tos. Um, with somatic tools, I love a lot of energy, like that's natural to my body, not to my mind. So to my brain and my mind, most of the time I'm like, I could go for a sweet casual walk, but my body loves to dance. So then I'm like, hey body, what is it that you need? And sometimes, you know, I can get quiet. Maybe you hear something, maybe you don't, maybe you're one to do a little muscle testing or something like that. Really good ways to start practicing like trust with your body is like muscle testing or the sway test. I can expand if you want me to, but you know, start to just kind of gauge information from your body. You can simply talk to your body and then see what comes up. For me, it's always like, time to move, let's go. And I'm like, put on the music, and maybe after like 2 minutes, I'm like, oh yeah, this feels really good. It satisfies something for my body, not my mind, not my brain, but my body. So when I start thinking of it like that, of like, body, what is it that you want to eat? Body, what is it that you want to do? How do you want to stretch? Like, how do you want to lie down? Then we can start to realize like our bodies, just like our brains, are built to keep us alive. That's why we have healing processes like wound healing that happens rapidly when we have a paper cut, right? And those cytokines get sent to that area, right? And that inflammation occurs all in order to protect you. So if you think about body as trying to keep you alive as well, start to communicate with it so you can kind of get to know it a little bit better and fulfill some of its needs.
I love it. I love the starting a conversation with the body and the personification, because yeah, we did do that with our limb B, and I love doing that. That's such a good introduction way to really begin to interact and listen. And I love that. I love that. I love that. I think a lot of different classes I go to and stuff, it's quite complex. So I love hearing the very the version that everyone can understand. I think that's really important. And I love that. I'm going to do that. I never thought about that. That's so funny. I also wondered, I know you were talking kind of like this formula of, okay, noticing where you're at, noticing where your body's at. Are there these survival responses happening, fight and flight, kind of the dorsal reflex and freeze? And I wondered, because we kind of went fast through that, but I thought that was cool and important. Is there a formula? Not like a formula of like you do a breath and do a thing, but like a formula for people to be able to find what works for them. Like, does that make sense? Like, when you're noticing this, do your brain retraining or do the somatic thing, like do a somatic thing first. Is there a formula for that where people
Yeah.
could kind of insert their own, I like to do this thing, I like to do that thing? I think just so it would be easier for people to start to really find what they like, rather, because I think a lot of people tell people what to do. They're like, do a VU breath and do this other thing. But I wonder if there's some kind of basic formula where people can insert their own favorite practice.
Yeah, yeah. So first, get to know you. So how I kind of work in Vital Side is like step one, awareness. Step two, acceptance. Step three, action for when you're ready to take action. So if you're asking for kind of that step one, it's awareness. So first, become aware of how you respond. And so we go through a technique and vital side, but like a kind of simple way to like start to bring awareness to how your body is responding is maybe for like 1 week, maybe 5 days. When you recognize limby showing up, and right, we know when limby shows up, your limbic brain, emotional feeling, reacting brain. Oftentimes she can show up in fear, in physical symptoms, right? That heart beating fast, breathing fast, hyperreaction, hypersensitivity to something. And those are more of that fight flight category. And then for freeze, that's more of that checking out, depressed, slow down, slow motility in the gut, brain fog, dizziness, fatigue, these types of things where you're like, okay, that's freeze. That's kind of the slowing down in order to protect. So in general, like you can work with those two responses. Also, there's the fawn response. There's other trauma responses. Fawn is a common one where it's like, have to be perfect, have to, that's more of that perfectionistic, have to people please, that kind of thing. So if you work with those three responses, say, and at the end of each day for about 5 to 7 days, just write down any experience you had where you experienced fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Like, what was going on during that time? How did you feel? What were you doing? Were you eating? Were you just lying down? Were you talking to someone? Kind of giving some context to what you experienced. And by the end of 5 days, let's say, you have this information about when you experienced what. Now, this isn't like a roadmap for how you'll experience your life, but it may be what's going on right now. And I know a lot of times when we bring that conscious awareness, it can feel like discombobulating, but again, put on those goggles of that, unbiased observer of like, this is an experiment and I'm just learning, because we need to learn how these responses show up in order to best communicate with them. That's why awareness and then the acceptance piece, I think acceptance sometimes falls by the wayside because we're like mad at Limby and we hate Limby. And like, if you've ever been mad at like your pet or your kid or a friend, yelling at them is like the worst thing that you can do, right? It's like you can't communicate with them effectively when you're like, I'm so angry at you and I hate you. And they're like, okay, I'm not willing to make any changes or sacrifices because like this is not appropriate. Same goals for the way we're modeling to our brains and bodies again and again. So we want to, and I know it takes time, but we want to show up with patience and love and learn acceptance. So that first piece is getting to know how we respond. So going back, we have at the end of that 5 days, we have some information on like how we've been responding and showing up. And then now it's like, okay, the next week you're like, well, I really responded with freeze more often than not. So now my go-to is going to be completing the stress cycle with a brain retraining tool, and then finishing that with a somatic tool where I apply a little bit of movement. Again, applying that same kind of formula that we talked about earlier. But in your notes app on your phone, write down your top 5 favorite retraining tools, and then write down your top 5 somatic tools. And so just kind of keeping that handy so that you can like be like, okay, in that moment, where brain retraining, it's like, visualize or grounding with visualization. My favorite go-to imagery of like watching, my breath move through my body with a color. And so we're including our favorite retraining tools to slow down first, and then top 5 somatic tools. Okay, and so to move out of this, it'll be like like humming the happy birthday song twice over, right? A little bit of that vagal toning, tapping on my body, some movement with meridian points. Maybe you're into EFT, right? And so then you write down your top 5 somatic tools. Now, I know this sounds like a little bit of complex. Maybe you're taking frantic notes, but the idea is in that moment, you get to choose. I choose, I decide.
Mhm.
So I've got my favorite brain retraining tool and somatic tool. That's the formula I'm going to use for freeze. And I've been showing up with freeze more often than not. And now I've got all my faves here. Top 5, top 5. And so at first, when you kind of move through this throughout the day, you can look at that and refer to your notes app when this happens. But then it'll get easier after about a week. You're like, oh no, I love like to pair like lying down on the ground with putting my legs up the wall and then starting, my movement. And then I've got my healing scent, and you're like, okay, I'm like really found this rhythm that works for me. You get to choose, you get to decide. There are experts everywhere, and I love it. I love that people are talking about this. I love that there's a lot of information, but you know you better than anyone. So give yourself permission to move through in this formula so you have some structure without the rigidity. Leave out the rigidity of like, it has to look like this. It's you shifting you, and y'all, like, just some information here, but like when you are the one deciding what you get to do, that makes stronger, more sustainable long-term changes. So you can use a program and see, in 3 days, you're like, oh my gosh, everything is better. I'm all better. Things are good because this person told me to do something in this way. But it's the aftermath. It's like then after like 5 days, maybe you're using the tools and you're like, oh, it's not as effective, it's not as potent anymore. Are you doing something because someone else said to do it like this, or are you doing it because you're like, oh yeah, like my body feels really good when I do the vagal toning paired with the legs up the wall. So when you get to choose, I have seen this time and time again, and a lot of practitioners that I love and respect really talk about this. It's you shifting you, and those are the more sustainable, lasting changes that you can hold on to and be super proud of, because that is all you.
Mhm. I love that. I think I agree that it's about really the whole healing journey, I believe, is about finding us and choosing from ourselves. And so if we can do that within the practice, to explore all these things, but do it with an intention that we're exploring these tools that, we might get from a program or a practitioner, exploring them and allowing ourselves to adapt them in ways that might feel better. So allowing our systems to unfold these tools into things that actually work more for us. Like some people like do the VU breath. I love the VU breath. It's great. But maybe you find you'd rather like chant or do Om, or just like you said, hum a song. All these are the same thing. It all fits under the same thing. And I think it really is about enjoying what we're doing while we're doing it, especially when it has to do with somatics, because it really is our body enjoying it, or our body just doing it to do it. And that's quite a big energetic field functional difference. So yeah, that's why I said, I'm like, I hope people can really hear that, especially in somatics. And I'll just say this from my own point of view, I see a lot of classes and people and programs giving you a million tools to use. And I think that's wonderful and great. And I think that's a good first step, because we need to know the tools. But in the end, I truly believe the topic of somatics is about exploring our body in an open-minded way, not using a tool. Eventually, I think that's the kind of advanced version, but eventually it's about exploring our body and finding what feels good in speaking and communicating with this organism. And brain retraining is similar too. You find the way, what you like to do, and you do that. So I'm very passionate about that.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how you've continued to study that. Like you're a
Yeah.
great example of like, starting with brain retraining and then continuing that journey with somatic tools. And it's like, yeah, that kind of worked for you, and that the way that you use the tools, I think that's really, really great. And, something I mentioned earlier, like about intention, while we're in the process, while we're still experiencing like the physical symptoms and stuff like that, it's really helpful to have an intention in mind. And so you could do this like once a day. I like to do it like once a week. That way I just have like a new and fresh word that I'm kind of focused on. But kind of forget about the semantics of like somatics, brain retraining, labels, this, that. And it's like, if I have my intention of like this week, I want to create more joy. What are the tools that you've acquired from all the knowledge that you've gained as a seeker? I get it. We've all been in that seeker seat, and all the tools that you've acquired, and stuff that you like, and music and cards and like all these really cool things. Like, what are the things that align and allow you joy? And maybe like that meditation you've been doing, it's like maybe you don't really feel joyful after it. You like it, but it doesn't bring you joy. Okay, I'll press pause on that this week and do the things that bring me joy. So same thing if it's like peace. Okay, maybe that's when you have that meditation or whatever it is, right? But then get that list going of like, these are the tools that I like that bring me joy. And now I can have that intention in mind. So simplify. Simplify, simplify. Whenever you feel overwhelmed by the labels, the content, the voices that are out there in the world talking about this, simplify and come back to you. Like Ash said, like giving yourself, reconnecting with your body, reconnecting with your brain, honing in on you. And that can be weird and uncomfortable at first, but the one thing you can start to do is start with intention. What is it I choose to focus on this week? What do I want to cultivate more of? And then that can dictate what tools you use and when you use them.
Love that. I love simple things. Give me the ABCs any day. Thank you so much, Lindsay. We are kind of nearing the end before our Q&A. Is there anything else you'd love to share before we go into Q&A that you think would be helpful for people on this topic?
Well, I'll mention a couple things around trauma processing.
Okay.
Because I think this is important. This may resonate with someone today. And like too, I've just heard it in my community, like a lot of people are confused when to focus on what. And if you can again simplify, like we're talking about somatics and brain retraining, when I think about healing modalities, I put them in like 3 different buckets, and that's the physical body, food, like whatever else you're doing to take care of your human body, and that can include somatic tools, dance, movement, exercise. Your nervous system again can include somatic tools, can include brain retraining, focusing on your nervous system and that communication. And then the third bucket is trauma processing. So again, somatics can live in all 3 of these. So what is the intention you have right now? So if that intention is joy, how can I address joy with my physical body, with my nervous system? And then maybe trauma processing, we press hold on that for now. But this is just like, these 3 buckets are like what I've seen to be most effective in the journey of healing. And I think you can get in a really good rhythm with the physical body and nervous system. But trauma processing comes at different times for different people. So like somatic experiencing was initially designed for people to process trauma. Like EMDR is a somatic tool, right? So there's all different types of these tools. You don't have to do everything at once. And I know, like, for a lot of people that I've seen, like, getting into the good rhythm of the physical body and nervous system first can give you that strength, capability to then maybe years later start the trauma processing journey. That was personally like what I did. Lori, who went through Vital Side Rewire, and now she's a coach in Rewire, and, like, she did the same thing. It was, like, a year after she started, she got to that point where she was like, "Okay, 90% better. Then I'm going to address that piece."
Mhm.
Um, it's different for everyone, so give yourself permission if you're like, "No, I wanna do all 3 at once." You get to choose and you get to decide, and I've seen that happen where it's been effective, but just allow yourself to be able to choose what works for you, and know that you don't have to do everything all at once, because that can be really inundating to the system. So take one step, one piece at a time. And I'll end there because I know we have a few minutes left, but I just thought I'd throw that in there because I know that can be a little bit confusing.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I think we need to have a talk on that. Thank you for reminding me. I need to get someone on here about that because it's really important. But yeah, I think I would say the same thing in my own experience. There was no way in hell at the beginning of this I would have, or even maybe knew what was existing underneath of the symptomology. So I'm really glad that I did brain retraining and gained this ability to change state change, I guess I would call it state change, or at least state shift, or at least positively move my brain into a different direction of positivity, even if just a little tiny bit. I think that was really important for me to learn in my body before doing any kind of trauma work. And I think somatics, yeah, for me, it was just like good to know that and learn about the nervous system, because while you're working through trauma work, depending on what you're doing, it's kind of like you don't know what's going to happen. And I'm not saying it's anything bad will happen, but you just don't know what's going to happen. So it's nice to have that sense of resiliency built in somewhat, and that sense of psychoeducation about the nervous system while you're working through that stuff. And because it's all in your body, to have that as a foundation, I believe people should be informed before going to work on that stuff. On all of it, because we all know we're holding some things inside.
Yeah,
But I
that's a
won't get
great
more into that. We'll do that next on another one. There's so much fun stuff to talk about that stuff too. I love that topic. Do you mind staying a little after, Lindsay, to answer questions? I think we have
Sure.
to lengthen the sessions because we seem to always go over. So maybe we'll see what people have. Sometimes it's pretty short. If you'd like to ask a question, please put it in the chat. I'm not going to be able to get to everybody's, but we will do what we can. So I will read them to you, Lindsay. So you don't have to. So Donnie says, so to confirm, completing the stress cycle goes from the place of a trigger to a place of safety.
Yeah, and the idea isn't that you will automatically feel safe, but think of it as modeling to your body safety. So if you're completing it in like a 2-minute period, like 90 seconds is the lifespan of an emotion, but is the lifespan of a physiological response as well. So maybe for the 30 seconds, you complete that stress cycle. And then after that, using a minimum of like 90 seconds to model to your body a new way of being. Again, it may not be like, oh, I experience safety right here, right now, but it's model, model, model.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That was awesome. It was great. Okay. So Lindsay, can you give a quick overview of the levels of your program and cost for each? I was trying to figure it out on your site, but my reading capacity is low due to symptoms. Maybe just a simple version of that? What
I'll
you
go
offer?
through very quickly. Yeah. So first is reset, quick 7-day intro. If you are totally new to brain retraining, it's like $15, very, very fast, but good if you want more info. Rewire, that's the comparative program to like DNRS or GUPTA or some of those other programs out there for people with chronic illness and chronic symptoms. If you're not doing a retraining program, that's where I would start. We've got like a month of group sessions included. Elevate is the next one. And so this is the one usually people like you who have done another brain retraining program will complete Elevate. And Elevate is for people who are in other programs. Maybe you've done VitalSide or DNRS, it doesn't matter. And you're wanting to add like somatics and purpose and play and fun to your practice. That's for you if you've done another program and you're looking to level up. So those are the 3 I'll focus on for now. We have a few other things, but most people in here could probably find a way to kind of fit themselves into each of those. So if you're more advanced in your retraining practice, I recommend checking out Elevate. I'm offering you all a 30% discount today, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. But just so you know, that's something we're doing for people here at Rewire Your Wellness.
Thank you. Thank you. Cassie says, do you recommend an hour-ish of rewiring practice a day in total?
I recommend you find out what works for you. Priorities look different for every single person. Prioritize your practice, meaning this is something that you're working on. Stick with that intentional word each day. And if it's 5 minutes, if it's an hour, if it's 30 minutes, that to me, like the time it doesn't matter as much. And I don't think it should be considered as rigidly as what you're paying attention to and how you're prioritizing your practice. So again, that probably goes against some other people's practices. Do it in a way that feels good to you so it doesn't become an obligation. My philosophy on brain retraining and nervous system regulation as a whole is it becomes a lifestyle rather than a rigid obligatory practice. So how can I make my current practice more of a lifestyle so I feel connected to it and aligned with it? So that's what we talk about in Elevate too, kind of getting yourself like reinvigorated about your practice so you feel really aligned to it. And being able to know that you are unique. And so, yeah, maybe the hour a day doesn't resonate with you. And if that's you, maybe you sprinkle it in 2 minutes every single hour, right? Everyone is very different. So give yourself permission to connect with you and your needs.
Thank you, Lindsay. There's just a kind of, what do you call that? Trying to get to understand, how do you do a brain retraining first when you are in freeze, shutdown, fatigue mode?
So yeah, and it could be like you get on the ground and you put your legs up the wall. And in that moment, you put your focused attention, I call it an anchor item. So it could be like, I just have this sitting here, but it could be like an item that is anchoring you into the moment, into the present moment. And I encourage you to have, it has some sort of texture, some sort of maybe even smell, like if maybe you can put an essential oil on it, something that can bring your focused attention to the moment in time. So putting yourself up in that position, legs up the wall, maybe that's considered more somatic, but then the brain retraining, putting your focused attention on that item and just paying attention to the texture, the color, the temperature, how it feels against your hands. Those are things that you can kind of use in that brain retraining realm to tap into that moment.
Thank you. I'm going to read 2 questions. Could you state the simple formula again for flight, fight, and freeze response? I thought that was
So, and maybe like Kathleen, you could write this out, but it's going to be like fight, flight. So for all together, complete the stress cycle and then model a new way of being. That's what you want to think about it as. So again, maybe it doesn't quite resonate with you of like freeze is like, you know, in that moment focusing on something else. Like maybe you do a somatic tool. So again, give yourself permission, but generalize, you want to complete stress cycle and model a new way of being. So in general, fight flight equals somatic tool for 30 seconds, then brain retraining tool to model a new way of being. Freeze in general equals brain retraining tool 30 seconds, and then somatic tool for at least 90 seconds, model a new way of being. But experiment with it and allow yourself to kind of feel out what works for you, because it may be something different, a little bit different. But you want to get to that piece where you're modeling a new way of being. And for many, that's safety, peace, ease. For some, it's joy.
Thank you. I'm just going to have Kathleen, I just noticed people are kind of dropping off. Can you drop in the 30% off, Lindsay, if you want to say anything about that in the chat so we can just get that to people who are here? I just have a couple more questions after that, but I want to make sure people all get that information.
Okay,
So,
yeah. So for Elevate, yeah, we're offering you a 30% discount today, which is really cool. So Kathleen's gonna drop that in the chat and you'll receive an email with that discount code. But really Elevate is designed for brain retrainers, and it doesn't matter what program you're joining in with. The idea is we take the nervous system regulation, that tools that you've learned, and we learn to personalize them, bring that kind of playfulness to them, and give you some resources to allow you to connect with your purpose. So I do this with my partner, Bianca Spears, who's a laughter wellness coach, and she and I partnered up to create this program since we've worked with people in the brain retraining realm for about 11 years combined. And so we created this program so that people didn't have to buy really expensive private coaching sessions. So we combined all the knowledge that we formulated in our coaching sessions and created Elevate. So it includes some group sessions too, so you get to know other brain retrainers from other programs. But we're coming up on our 2-year anniversary of Elevate. So yeah, so that link will be in the chat and you can receive that 30% discount. So I think in one place it says 25, it's actually 30%. So yeah, just sign up on that email list and you'll get some more information.
perfect. Will we be able to offer that to the people who have the recordings when I send out the link?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Just include that link in there of to claim that 30% discount code, and then they'll get an email with that code in there.
Okay, great. Let's see. I have one more question. To Lisa, I see your question. Do you want to see that? Kind of struggling with brain energy, doing rounds. Do you offer coaching, and where can I find that? Do you offer coaching anymore? I can't remember.
Yeah, so if you're in another, it sounds like you may be in another program, which is fine. Again, everybody should be able to find kind of a reinvigoration in their practice. What I first recommend, Lisa, is booking a Q&A with me. I'll drop a link here. But it's a 30-minute call where we just talk a little bit and we can decide if private sessions is the way to go. In my course, I do offer private sessions to Vital Sighters, but sometimes I'll offer them for people in other programs, just depending on your situation. So we talk first and we chat about what your goals are, and then I design a program for you if it's a good fit.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Lindsay, and thank you everyone for being here. If just check in the chat, I did drop in all of her Instagram and Facebook and the 30% off of Elevate. So make sure you check that out. Lindsay is wonderful. She has great stuff on her Instagram if you're on there too, all the time. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming to Rewiring Your Wellness speaker sessions. Make sure to look out on the 15th for the newsletter for the next session, which will be on June 27th at 11 a.m. PST. Let's see. Yeah, check out the blog, check out the website. Kathleen will drop the links for Rewiring Your Wellness in there. Make sure you're signed up for the newsletter. And that's about it. Thank you, everyone, for joining. If you want to drop a emoji into the chat, I'd love to see how you're feeling right now. What's going on for you, if you enjoyed that. Oh, yay, we got a celebration thing. Yeah, love to see what's going on for you. If you really like that session, just drop in an emoji. I like that, Rachel. Thank you for happy faces. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Cassie. Oh, thank you, Lisa, Bonnie. Yes, we really appreciated having you here, Lindsay. You're always a joy to have. And I think we have Bianca up on the schedule soon, your partner. So happy to have you. I'll let you sign off if you'd like, and I will just continue here with everyone until we sign off. So don't want to hold you in your Airstream any longer. You're welcome to say goodbye to everyone too.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. I enjoyed this and so good to meet you. Someone asked about a Rewire discount, and I'm actually having a sale on it right now. So I'll quickly drop that in and then I will get off. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Bye. Thank you, guys. I'm gonna let Lindsay drop that in the chat. I don't see it yet, Miss Lindsay. We might have lost her. Did we lose her? Is she gone? I think she's gone. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Stopping the recording. Perfect. Perfect. Thank you. I'm going to, is everyone still there? I'd like everyone to sign out for me just so I can chat with my assistant for a minute, if that's possible. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.